So, hey, look, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Today, I've got Richard and Carlos with me, founders of Synapsewerx. We chew the fat every week about what's going on and, you know, what's happening in the industry and what's cool and what's hot and what's not. Today, though, we thought, just because some of the questions that we've been getting from out in the industry, from customers and architects, there's a particular topic that's kind of coming up, and so we thought today we'd just record this little bit of our chat and share it with you, because it's a common question that we're getting almost daily at the moment, and we thought there'd be some value in sharing our views and thoughts, and and that topic is all around APIs, MCP and A2A. So, hey, Richard, what have we been hearing?
Well, it's interesting. We had two customer chats this week, and one with an enterprise architect, another one with the platform lead, and both of them, I think, with the news that's particularly coming out in the last couple of weeks, just we're asking a bit of a sort of theoretical question, saying, is the iPaaS dead or is it dying? And I thought it was really topical, considering there's a lot of noise around agentic AI and MCP and A2A, and I thought it'd be really good to have a discussion about that, because it seems to be on the top of mind, for key people inside inside our customer organizations, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I've certainly heard similar things, right? I've heard people, kind of put that vision forward that actually maybe we don't need an integration platform in the future, and if you roll kind of forward, kind of 3 to 5 years from now, it'll just be all the key applications, SAP, Salesforce, ServiceNow. They'll have their own little agent, connected to an MCP server, with access to all of the APIs into the data sources of those platforms, and that agent via MCP or A2A will just then talk to the agent of SAP or Databricks or whatever, and where's the integration, right? The data's flowing, and agents just talking to each other and orchestrating that. So, hey, Carlos, how real is any of this? Will that ever happen? Should we be worried about the role of iPaaS either now or in the future?
Well, and I was going to say, do we need to iterate again our enterprise reference architecture in this sort of space, right? Because we thought it was pretty rock solid with where everything's at the moment. So yeah, really keen on your thoughts, Carlos.
Yeah, well, the reality is that AI is moving so rapidly, and you are right. Pretty much every day, at least in more than 5 occasions across different customers and partners, we have been hearing the question, one way or another, is iPaaS dead? And our answer is yes. I'm just kidding. Actually, it's far from it. The reality is that it is not dead at all. And it's actually the same as if you start thinking about, like, well, will cars only fly in the future? And the answer is, like, probably they will. Some of them will fly, but not all cars will fly, right? The reality is that this is just an interpretation of how quickly AI is evolving. And we know that because AI is evolving so rapidly, it is creating a lot of changes and a lot of frustration, a lot of chaos out there. There has to be standards that need to happen that will start determining how is that we can reduce a lot of this frustration, a lot of this chaos into ways that, things used to work in the past, but, providing that extra ability of not being just rigid orchestration or rigid questions. We want to be more open-ended questions. And this is where I believe, not anytime soon, by the way, but I can see how standards like A2A will definitely be important in the future, and will probably be a way in which some of the work that we would have done in a more traditional iPaaS way, it could potentially be done differently, in those cases where you don't have a specific structure, where you don't have specific predictability on what is going to happen, and you are leaving that a little bit more open to interpretation for agents to decide what to do and what level of discoverability needs to happen for them to talk to the next agent, and then the next agent, and the next agent. To be honest, I don't see this to be fully emerging in a very mature way in the enterprise game, at least not in Australia not in the next 16 months. I don't see that. That's my view. I might be wrong.
Yeah. Look, I agree. I think A2A is cool. It's interesting from a agentic workflow point of view. I think it's going to have some serious relevance in the future. But I think we all know the reality right here, right now, is things are moving really fast. Yeah. Building AI agents is there's a bit of effort and thought and consideration involved in doing that. And there's we're doing a lot of that ourselves as an organization, and we know many other organizations are still in the infancy of their journey just around building agents. That next level of agentic workflow and embedding, multiple agents and orchestration of agents. Tools are being made for that right now. Capability is there. We've built some of this ourselves, but A2A in that context is still nowhere near ready or mature enough. So it's a great idea. It's a good concept. It's there's some applications for it, but it's got to mature a hell of a lot for it to even become widely used across the industry.
I agree.
MCP, on the other hand, though, whoa, that's kind of really relevant and going gangbusters, and every man and his dog is jumping in because it really does, as we've said in one of our recent videos and demos, really does open up all of that investment that you've made in those APIs. You can put an MCP wrapper around it, turn it into a server, and then agents can start interacting with that, and it's that's kind of cool.
I agree. When you start talking about A2A from a future point of view, the way I see it is basically talking about autonomy, agent autonomy. That will happen. I know it will happen in the future. Yeah. We are not there yet. We are actually far from being there yet, especially in the enterprise. At Synapsewerx, we always spend a lot of time playing, behind doors so that we can have the best possible outcome and solution for our customers. And what we need to present for them is basically maturity and capability and being deterministic in the outcomes that we are providing. Human in the loop is right now super important, and we cannot leave it almost in any use case that we are taking to customers right now. Thinking about autonomy from an agent point of view is something that I can see being very experimental right now, a great idea, something that is going to keep evolving. But right here, right now, in the enterprise game, human in the loop, super important. And what takes us to another a minor level of autonomy, which is how can we instruct our agents so that internally they are capable to bring and ring fence the right data, the right amount of data. And for that type of autonomy, then yes, MCP is very, very important. What do you think, Richard?
Yeah, I equate it to Tesla's journey to fully autonomous driving, right? There's definitely a need for a period of time to have human in the loop. There's so many dependencies and environments and conditions by which full autonomy, is accepted, and people feel safe and secure that they've got all the right things in place to govern and secure and understand what's going inside their network before they let the hounds loose in that respect. Yeah, I was thinking about that sort of stuff, and hearing Musk just recently saying that, in the next year or two, he's expecting millions of his vehicles to be on the roads, driving fully autonomously. That's probably like the same sort of time frame before enterprises and customers have that degree of confidence that they've got their full house in order to take advantage of large scale autonomy in that sort of respect. So yeah, your point around human in the loop is hugely valid.
Yeah, I think it's a question of, again, it's human in the loop, and the question of is AI going to make jobs redundant? It's a big conversational topic with, especially in certain industries, in public sector and healthcare. It comes up often when talking to those organisations about AI agents and how it can add value. But again, I think it's a pretty simple answer at the moment. I think it goes back to what many people will echo, and it's AI plus humans or humans plus AI is better in some cases than just humans or just AI. And I don't think AI, especially GenAI, I just don't think it's mature enough yet to be left to its own devices fully. There's lots of really good documented examples now of where it goes off, and hallucinations are a big issue. Surety of response, consistency of responses. You really do need human in the loop, especially in many industries where you're looking for much higher levels of accuracy, and where there are consequences of poor quality responses from agents.
And that is a very important point, Malcolm, because we have been in this trend for the last at least 18 months. Thinking deeply about enterprise solutions that involve AI to enhance humans to do their job better. And one of the things that we experienced by implementing these solutions is a lot of frustration, because we tried, at least for, like 12 months ago and before, we thought that LLMs were going to be the solution for everything. And this is something that we have discussed in many other videos, and pretty much every time that I have the opportunity, I talk about how wrong we were, because we thought that LLMs had to be fine-tuned. We thought that LLMs had to be modified in a way that they were going to be smart enough to talk about my data, and we were wrong. We got it working in some capacity, but again, the level of consistency, reliability, and accuracy that you mentioned were not there yet. At least not to the standards that we are used to. Being implementing enterprise solutions for the last 20 years. We need to be 100% certain, and we cannot obtain 100% accuracy with an LLM taking our data and thinking about our data. And this is where MCP is very important. And again, MCP is evolving so rapidly, because we needed something that was going to remove all of that fiddliness to make an LLM smart enough to speak our data. We don't need to. We shouldn't do it. That's potentially the first mistake. What we should do instead is to rely on investments that companies have done, organizations have done for the last 15, 20 years, which is going into those integrations. Again, a very important aspect for iPaaS in there. Whatever integrations that are already in place that are pulling data from systems on exposing that data as APIs, well, no need to reinvent the wheel. Just use that information, use those APIs, use those integrations, and simply use the LLM for what it does very well, which is to reason about an open-ended question, whether it's from a human or another agent, in order to identify, okay, I am being asked about this. I don't know anything about ERPs. Probably in my trained data, I know everything to do with generically ERPs, but that's not the point here. Right here, they are asking me about something and they want 100% accuracy. And I have been instructed that, there are already APIs and there are integrations in the backend that go into the systems and expose the right information that I need to take in order to present that as part of an end-to-end flow. And that is 100% accurate. And we are in full control, or in a way that we can take these solutions to enterprise. We can blend traditional AI with generative AI and the traditional integration iPaaS world in a way that it just works.
Yeah, and I think all of the stuff that we've been doing and all of those examples and demos that we've been working through recently, there's a real strong indication that it starts to address many of those challenges around hallucination, around consistency of results, and it's doing it in a more secure way. Still need to consider guardrails, still need to think about the questions you can ask and the responses that you can share. But again, that's just good, solid engineering, and we've got those practices and principles for years and almost generations now, I think, within IT. So it's super exciting. I think MCP and leveraging APIs is just, it's just really, really cool, really, really practical. And it's a fast way for an organization to realize the benefits of, like you said, Carlos, GenAI. It's really great at conversation with humans, and it's amazing now at reasoning, like shockingly so. And then let the APIs do what the APIs have always really been very good at doing, which is deterministic, very specific kind of extraction of data and input of data into a back end and database. So yeah, cool. Richard.
I was just going to say it's creating for a pretty exciting conversation around the merging of those operational and analytical estates now, and themes of data currency as well, and making people start to think about the time value of their data in an AI context, right? Because out of date data is not going to give you probably the business result that you're looking for when you start making these sort of investments. So it's a really great conversation to have right now.
Yeah, and just just to extend to what you guys just mentioned, also in the past at Synapsewerx, we had to try a lot of black magic in order to reduce the number of hallucinations and fact checking. These are two of the most important guardrails that need to be in place all the time. And when you are using your APIs, when you are using and ring fencing the data, slow data and fast data as it is coming through, and you are taking that information from APIs or from your Kafka streams, and you are pulling that information. Again, no need to hallucinate, because you are ring fencing the right data that is going to make the answer. And again, it also becomes a very simple way to do fact checking, to ensure that whatever you are responding to is factual. It is governed by principles that have been in place for decades, and it is accurate. It just works, and we can start going and implementing very intelligent and valuable use cases for organizations.
Yeah, really, really exciting times, hey? Just kind of bringing it back, though, to the original question. What was it? Is iPaaS dead? I think pretty strong conclusion from our side that no. In fact, on the contrary, right? I think this is a new lease of life for iPaaS. I think it's about looking at this from a different lens. As we've said a few times now, all that investment in integrations and interfaces and APIs, leveraging that through technologies such as MCP, building MCP capability into iPaaS platforms, allowing us to be able to use agents, to be able to do that and connect and orchestrate all via your integration platform, leveraging those skills, that capability, that expertise in data and integration that's been built up. Certainly, I've been doing it for 30 years, and it's been going longer than that. Being able to leverage all of that and then put that into the context of LLMs and GenAI and traditional AI. This is where integration platforms are going to shine. And I think the smart vendors are switched on to this. The smart vendors in this space are making investments in AI, in the AI capability of their platforms, and not just building kind of tools that allow you to talk to the platform, but building tools that allow you to look at AI across your organization, that allow you to look and interact with agents, thinking about governance and control. And I think that's really relevant. I think, we've all seen what happened with APIs. Once you start to understand the value of them, you start building lots of them, and they end up all over the place, and they kind of pop up like rabbits. And we've been through this cycle with APIs and integration, needing to building governance and control. Same's going to happen with agents, and so the smart vendors are thinking in this way, and this makes the integration platform even more relevant, right? So yeah, I think iPaaS is not dead. Long live iPaaS.
iPaaS is not dead, and actually, far from it, as you said. If for any customer or any organization watching and listening right now, actually, this is the moment where that promise for APIs to accelerate the speed and agility. This is how. This is how any API that is already part of the catalog of enterprise APIs can be used in order to create very, very complex and tangible benefits business cases that use AI. And MCP just makes it pretty easy.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, fellas. Look, I've got one other side tangent to talk about because it's kind of related, and we just touched on it, and that's AI policy, right? So, we see all sorts of organizations, shapes and sizes, and different kind of cultures. Some are just diving right in and just building agents and experimenting, and we get that. I think it's the shiny ball to chase at the moment, and I think there's probably increasing pressure coming top down within organizations to go do something meaningful with AI right now. But I think we just know with some of our conversations, especially at C-level, we're starting to get the question about AI policy, about governance, and that kind of top-down governance, as well as what we would be traditionally looking at, applying policies to APIs or to agents and having that kind of control and consistency. What are your thoughts, fellas, on AI policy? Is that something organizations should be looking at? Is that something they should do, or should they go play and experiment and maybe bolt on a bit of policy later on in the day?
My view is that you have to do both, and there are ways in which you can do both. But we've found organisations that are not considered their AI policy and their governance frameworks and guardrails and those sort of things, and as they've gone off and barreled down the path of experimentation, and we're considering pushing those things into production and try to get all the business value that they've anticipated released, and just hitting a roadblock, because they don't have those policies thought about, they don't have them documented, they don't have them agreed, and they don't have them being pushed down into the tooling that's available now to secure and govern what they need to have. So I think there's a really good rationale for having both, and just making sure that organizations are aware that they should at least have a really good policy in place before they consider some significant investments in that space, if they don't already. But if they are, we don't want to obviously stifle ambition to explore and experiment, but at the same time, we also want to provide that really robust counsel that they need to have these sort of things in place in order to be able to be successful, for what they're what their journey and agenda is.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree with you, Richard. My view is the same. There has to be AI policy and there has to be something in place, because one of the side effects of using AI is that data can be compromised quite easily. And if this is something that is not thought seriously, and if there is not a policy that and a framework that ultimately determines what is allowed and that is not allowed, and what sort of technical enforcement need to be in place, what to do when certain conditions happen, what is going to happen is that, innovation is not going to reach to the point that it can actually move to production. And we have seen that multiple times. When good experimentation goes into a point that someone asks in that organization, okay, tell me what is going to be the breach policy. What are we going to do in case there is a big hallucination, or is going to be a jailbreak that is happening, or what is going to happen if this particular model is not available? Can we switch to another one? These are very simple, straightforward questions that we used to ask all the time in the old world. And we had to design for failure. We had to design having security as the top one principle always in place. It is exactly the same, if not even more important, when it comes to AI. It is not something that involves just a particular department. Everybody should be thinking about that. It is very important also to make sure that, so what we are also seeing is that some organizations are taking a year to create an AI policy. And again, that's probably wrong, because by the time that you finish your AI policy, probably it's outdated already. And when it comes to an AI policy, it comes frameworks around like what is allowed, not allowed, many aspects and tenets of what needs to be thought about an organization. But also there will be some aspects around frameworks and enforcements and technical aspects that will ultimately determine how that is going to allow that innovation. All of these things need to be important. And one of the best ways in which we have identified to get it moving, as you said, Richard, is as some use cases are being disclosed and we identify that there is no IT policy at all in an organization. Normally, the first step is to say, okay, let's start building the framework of the IT policy that is going to be ultimately the baseline, the foundation for us to be able to apply the right use cases. And then, it doesn't have to be an overkill. It's just enough for it to be safe, to start using safe use of the technology and the capabilities in order to get to a point that we ensure that an organization is not going to end up in the papers for the bad reason.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think lots of experimentation taking place, but there's so many statistics and surveys now from the GSIs and some of the top vendors out there that kind of points to the fact that maybe 10 to 20% of AI experimentation, development, and POCs are getting through to production. I think some organizations seem to have it down pat and just like really advanced and pretty good processes and in place. But for the majority, I think it's a challenge. And I think, those fundamental questions that we, as you said, Carlos, been used to for a long time in IT, making sure that security is in place. That's not always an easy answer where LLMs are concerned. How do you stop them from being broken? Someone soliciting information out of an LLM through some fairly structured and considered prompting. So I think policy is really important, especially when we're talking about the things that we're building and putting them into a production environment. But I think just in the more general sense too, just thinking about, we all as individuals have access to AI now. This is what's kind of fundamentally different, I think, with this technology than any other that's come in the industry over the last 25 or 30 years. So we can install our own versions of via the browser, right, of ChatGPT or Gemini or or whatever we want, Claude, or Grok, and install those on company devices and equipment, and organizations, I'm pretty sure out there, and they don't realize it, that their teams are sharing company documents. They'll be sharing proposals or RFP responses or commercial sensitive information. They're using AI to produce their internal reports or their business requirements documents or the technical specifications for the APIs. Now, where is that data going? Where is that intelligence going? It doesn't have to be personal information, but it still might be sensitive information. If you're sharing your API documents with third-party products like Grok, is it secure? Is it offshore? Is it being used? Is it stored somewhere? What if that third-party supplier gets hacked and someone's got all of the technical specs for your APIs? Yay! So policy is really important, and I think and all the things that are associated traditionally with putting policy in place. So all that governance, all that control, audit, training your internal team members in terms of what they can do and what they can't do and what the implications are. So anyway, AI policy, good stuff. Everyone needs one.
Well, and it's good to see, as we refresh our technology matrix, quite periodically now, because of the rate of change of investment in this space has just been so phenomenal. It's good to see that, the gaps that we've identified historically are now being bridged, and bridged, really, really cleverly, and which is still providing the runway for organizations to be able to proceed ahead with confidence, knowing that if they've got the right tooling around them as well to help with the enforcement of those policies, that tooling is becoming increasingly more available, and the gaps that they've had historically in the past are being closed very quickly.
Yeah, that's right. And we are also seeing how LLM companies, companies that provide some LLMs are also maturing and they are starting to treat their LLMs as a SaaS. They are starting to provide levels of SLAs and KPIs and levels of availability, and this is changing very rapidly, and this is very important for something as simple as LLM selection. If a company is just selecting blindly an LLM without doing a proper analysis, as in, okay, is this the right LLM for me? Does it align with all my security policies in the company? Simple things like that. It is part of AI policy, and this is why it is super important for us at Synapsewerx to, every time we are implementing an AI solution, that we make sure that we are doing the best possible interpretation of the regulatory compliance for that particular organization, for the country where they provide services, local standards and metrics that are important for each organization, and to ensure that anything that is going to be enforced, it is going to be aligned with those specifications and those metrics. And it's super important. Again, we don't want to boil the ocean. We do it in a very considered way, so that we can continue with that rhythm of innovation that is very important as well, but also very important to do it in a very mature way, which is the enterprise way.
Yeah, good stuff, gents. Look, conscious of time, I know we've got meetings and client sessions today, but thanks for the chat. Fantastic conversation. I'm pleased we've answered the question though. About iPaaS. iPaaS is not dead. Long live iPaaS, and it's good chat around policy too, because regulation's coming. Regulation for the industry is coming. It's it's lagging a little bit. Innovation is there, stomping ahead, but like governments and professional bodies will probably start to introduce more and more regulation to help control the industry a little bit. So look, good stuff. Thank you guys again. look, to everyone that is still watching this session, I hope you got some value out of it today. If you want to know more about Carlos, Richard, or myself, then kind of check out the links below. Before we finish the session, I'd just like to thank you for spending time with us today. If you've liked what you've seen and heard and want to hear a little bit more, then again, kind of do us all a favor, hit that like and subscribe. Really does help us. If you've got any questions for Carlos or Richard or myself, then just drop them in the comments below and we'll do our best to respond to them. Thanks again, and until next time, keep having fun with meaningful technology. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, team.